This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free, complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because of course you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this new platform will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Hello, welcome to Nick Hood Ministries. I'm Nick Hood. So glad that you're watching today. Today, I have a very special message and a very special guest. The message is taken from Luke chapter 8, where Jesus heals a woman who suffered with an issue of blood for 12 years. And he heals her without touching her. He heals her without talking to her. And he tells the woman, your faith has healed you. Well, today I have a very special guest, Dr. Andy Coleman, who's one of the top GYN OB doctors in Detroit, which means she's one of the best in America. And when we come back from this break, she's going to talk to us a little bit about that 12-year issue of blood and what that might have really been. So hold tight, don't go anywhere, pick up the phone, call a friend, tell them Nick Hood is on the line, and this show is about to begin. We'll be right back.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free, complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
Again, today I have with me Dr. Andrea Coleman, who is a doctor, gynecological and obstetrics doctor in Detroit. She was the chief GYN OB at Sinai Grace Hospital, part of the Detroit Medical Center. And she's a member of the church that I pastor, the Plymouth United Church of Christ in Detroit. And I invited her so especially today because she has a special skill set, and I wanted to get your take, Dr. Coleman, on this woman with a 12-year issue of blood. Just to refresh your memory, Jesus has returned to the Galilee. He's been across the Sea of Galilee on a healing and preaching mission, but he comes back. And when he comes back home, a woman, all the crowd is around him, touching him, and a woman comes up to him, and she sneaks up and she just touches the hem of his garment. She doesn't, touch the skin, just the hem. And Jesus turns around and he said, "Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "Master, you got all kind of people around you. Why are you asking who touched me?" And he said, "Virtue, I could feel virtue, power going out from me." And the woman came up, she fell down on the ground. She said, "I'm the one who touched you." And she told him she had been suffering for 12 years, had spent all of her money on physicians, and now she was trying Jesus. So I invited you here today because I'm just curious, as a doctor, a GYN-OB doctor, what thoughts do you have? What do you think this woman might have been suffering from?
So thank you very much for having me on today. And when you posed that question, the first thing I initially thought was that more than likely she was suffering from a condition of uterine fibroids. Uterine fibroids are pretty common. Most times they're not symptomatic, meaning that they don't cause problems for the patients. But when they do, the problems can be very significant. And the biggest issue that we see from women who suffer from this condition, we see heavy and abnormal bleeding. Sometimes it will be monthly bleeding, and some women suffer where they bleed almost every day. It can be very consequential because it can cause additional issues such as anemia, requiring blood transfusions, hospitalizations, the whole nine. So more than likely what this woman was suffering from was a condition called uterine fibroid.
Dr. Coleman, at what point typically will a woman reach out to a professional, a doctor?
So most times women who suffer with the condition of uterine fibroids will seek medical attention when the bleeding becomes so abnormal and such a strain where, not only do they have pain, but they may have fatigue that's associated with anemia that's caused from just all of the bleeding that they're having. Women in our societies now are very active and they're busy. They're moms, they have work outside the home, they have jobs, they have activities that they like to participate in, and sometimes just the sheer volume of bleeding and the blood loss that they experience every month can prevent them from, being active in those activities. So women will come and seek help when they are just tired of the symptoms of bleeding.
So the hysterectomy, I don't know much about that other than once a woman has the hysterectomy, basically they can't have children anymore, correct?
That is true. That is correct. So a hysterectomy means removal of the uterus or the womb, but it is not the only treatment that we have for uterine fibroids. So the hysterectomy is an absolute end result of the treatments that we can offer. But there are some steps that we can take in between, and that depends on the severity of the symptoms, the duration of the symptoms, the age of the patient. Uterine fibroids don't discriminate age-wise. We have patients who can have them from any time in their reproductive lives. I've operated on patients at age 25 with fibroids, patients at 22, patients at 50. So it depends on the age of the patient and whether or not the desire to continue to be able to bear children is there. And if that patient still desires children, then we perform a procedure called a myomectomy, where we actually go in and remove the uterine fibroids, keeping the uterus itself in place. So that's an option. With the advancement of so many technologies in medicine right now, we have lots of opportunities to provide lots of options for patients, some surgical, some non-surgical, but again, it depends on the severity of symptoms and the severity of the what's causing the symptoms. Fibroids can come in varying sizes and locations, all affecting symptoms. I believe that the woman from the Bible probably suffered from the type of uterine fibroids that were probably large and probably in a location that is known for causing more bleeding than others.
As you are probably aware, at our church, we've been involved for a number of years with a mission in Ethiopia, a healthcare mission, with one of our fellow church members, Dr. Ingida Asfal. And he built, in 2006, he started the establishment of a maternal child health center in a place called Awassa, Ethiopia, which is about 200 miles south of the capital, Addis Ababa. And there, they specifically focus, among other things, on a condition that I really didn't understand that well, but I'd like you to explain it to our audience, called the fistula. And could you explain what that is?
So a fistula is any communication between one organ to the next. It could be between bladder and vagina, it could be between the bowel and the vagina, but it's a tract where there's a communication that shouldn't be there. And what we see a lot of times, especially in fistulas involving the rectum and the vagina, a lot of those will occur after childbirth, when there has been excessive tearing or trauma to the vaginal area that may or may not have been repaired correctly. So that's when we'll see it. It's a very debilitating condition because, number one, it's difficult to repair. Most folks don't diagnose it correctly, but it's difficult to repair when it's there, and it can be completely life-changing. And I don't want to get too involved in the details of what it actually does, but when you have communications that shouldn't be there from one organ to the next, then you have things that happen to one organ that shouldn't happen.
And what I learned in Ethiopia was that one of the reasons why the young women, suffer with this fistula is because it's acceptable to have early weddings, early marriages, maybe as young as 12 years of age, and that the female's body is just not ready for childbirthing. But it's something that I'm very proud that I've been a part of, to at least try to help to reduce that problem. We've got to take a break, but when we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about the faith of the woman in the story, and then I want to talk about your faith. So folks, stick around and we'll be right back.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way the Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days, we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
Thank you again for sticking with us. Today I'm talking with Dr. Andrea Coleman, who's one of the top GYNOB doctors, works on female patients. And she's with us today, and we're talking about the woman with a 12-year issue of blood. So Dr. Coleman, again, I'm just delighted that you're with me on this program today. And I just want to know, you know, Jesus, well, Luke, in wrapping up this story, says, he records as an eyewitness account. In verse 48, he says, Jesus told the woman, your faith has healed you. And I want to talk a little bit about that. You were telling me before we started the program today that you pray all the time before you go into an operation. And I think that may be interesting for our audience to hear. I mean, what kind of prayer does the doctor of gynecology and obstetrics, what kind of prayers do you pray before, you know, helping to remove fibroids or repairing a fistula or whatever other kind of problem that a woman might bring to you?
Well, you know, I'm very proud to say that I am definitely a woman of faith, and I believe in prayer. I don't enter an operating room ever without praying with my patient and praying for my team that will have a successful surgery. I believe that, you know, there's so many things that can go awry when you're in an operating room, things that I know are completely out of my control. When a patient is put to sleep and goes on anesthesia, that's as close to death as they'll ever be. And they may not come out of that. There are risks that occur in surgery. So I always pray. I always ask God to guide my hands and to guide the hands of everyone who's touching the patient. I ask for, you know, the patient to have comfort and to be relaxed enough to let us take care of her. So I believe in faith in medicine. I think faith in medicine is a big part of my practice. And I think that, you know, it gives patients hope for sure to understand and to know that their physician or surgeon believes in a higher power, believes in God. I know that I do, and it has never failed me yet. Now, I've been in some pretty tricky, harrowing situations. I take care of a very high-risk population in the city of Detroit, and when it gets thick in there, I turn to God and said, I know you're in the room with me, but I need you to take control of these hands. I need you to help me. And he does, and he has. So I pray before every case. I pray for all of my patients. I pray for God to guide my hands and to give me discernment when I'm operating on someone, so that that blood vessel that may not be in the place where I wanted it to be, I know where it is, and I still know what it is. So he gives me that. I can't explain the level of comfort when I'm in a tough case. He is in my ear and he's saying, you're trained and you know what you're doing, and I'm here with you. Look over there, look at that, touch this, don't touch that. And he gives me that in the operating room. And that's a gift that I'm so grateful for. I don't know if all of my colleagues have it, but I'm certainly grateful that he's given that to me.
That is such a powerful witness, a powerful affirmation of faith. You're from originally, is it Greenville?
Greenville,
Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
So what was your faith introduction like? What did you go to church as a girl?
It was, you went to church or you didn't do anything else. You know, if you didn't go to church, it was you did nothing else the whole week. From Sunday school, vacation Bible school, Baptist Training Union, the whole nine. It was church at my house, and if you didn't go to church, you did nothing else. So I grew up in the church, and I'll tell you, you know, me coming from Mississippi, you know, my mom was a secretary, my dad was a school teacher. There were 7 kids in our house, and I wasn't the one who was supposed to go to medical school. You know, my parents couldn't really afford to send me to medical school, and but you know, when they dropped me off at college in Nashville, I knew then that I had a shot because they got me there. And when I managed to get accepted to medical school, I got called into the office and they said, you know, we're giving you a scholarship for 4 years. And I knew at that time that this was all, you know, ordained by God. And I knew at that point that I was going to to spend my life as a physician trying to give back what had been given to me. So
When
I'm
did you
very
know
grateful.
that you wanted to be a doctor?
Seriously, when I would watch Marcus Welby, MD, when I was 6. I was 6 years old. And I knew that I was going to be a doctor when I was 6. So everything that I did was to plan for that. I was a chemistry major in college, and I specifically went to Tennessee State University because it was down the street from Meharry Medical College. And I knew if I was at Tennessee State, I could go and meet the people at Meharry, and I could tell them, listen, you know, one day I want to come to your school. And that's how it played out.
One of the greatest compliments I have heard about you is from one of your classmates. I was on a book tour and in Palo Alto, California, where she is a minister, and she hosted me at her church. And she told me about growing up with you. And the interesting thing for our audience is that the woman that I met out there in California is white. You know, not that that's any big deal, but she told me how the two of you were in the first integrated class at your school in Mississippi. And that she told me, she said, Andy was always the brightest. She said, I could never keep up with her. And I said, well, I'm glad to know that. But, and I'm glad to hear your faith affirmation. And it is powerful. And it sounds like even at this stage of your life, you still are drawing on your faith.
Absolutely, every day. Every day.
What do you think about the words of Jesus when he says to the woman, your faith has healed you?
I think that's powerful because, you know, a lot of times, you know, I don't think that healing without faith is possible. I think that you have to believe that you are going to be better. You have to believe that you can feel better. So I think that faith is a powerful, powerful thing. I think that with faith there's hope. With hope there's healing. And that's a big part of my practice. That's a big part of my practice.
We have a number of women who are, I'm sure, looking at this program right now. And what advice would you give to a woman, whether or not she has fibroids, whether or not she's hurting? If a woman doesn't hurt or have any outward signs of bleeding, should they still have a relationship with a doctor and a GYN-OB?
So all women after age 21 should have a relationship with a gynecologist. The annual exam is a really important test. We screen for things that may not have symptoms at the moment, but that are there. That could be a problem. The cervical exam, the pap smear, is a prevention tool that we use for cervical cancer. We know that it works. We know that women who receive annual exams and annual pap smears typically don't get cervical cancer. The people that I've diagnosed cervical cancer, and they've not seen a doctor in several years. So there are things that are present that you may not have symptoms for that could still be a problem. So those are things that can be picked up as a part of a routine annual gynecologic exam. So yes, even if you don't think that you're having a problem, prevention is everything. Prevention leads to wellness, and we know that, so prevention is key.
So even though a woman has a primary care doctor, they still need a gynecologist.
Absolutely.
Gynecologist.
Yes.
Yeah. And what about aging out? Does a woman ever get to a certain age where she no longer needs to see a gynecologist?
So we know that the incidence of cervical cancer in this country is so radically reduced after age 64 that we don't recommend a pap smear exam. But there are other things that could be involved in a woman's care in the pelvis where she would still need to be seen by a gynecologist. There are lots of pelvic cancers that are out there that we know have some relationship to age. We know as women age, the incidence of breast cancer goes up. So the mammogram is still very important to do, even if you're not getting a pap smear. So yes, it's still important to have that relationship with a gynecologist because there are always things that we want to make sure that we are preventing or we're on top of to make sure that you're okay, that patient's okay.
Well, you know, the next story that follows the story in chapter 8 about the woman with a 12-year issue of blood is a story about a 12-year-old girl who is pronounced dead, and the daughter of Jairus. And next week I want to talk with you about that. But we've got to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for letting me talk with you about female health and the relationship with this woman in the Bible. And to those of you who are looking at this, again, I've been talking with Dr. Andrea Coleman, and she'll be back next week, and we're going to talk about another female who had a health problem. But until next week, God bless, God keep you, and remember, I am praying for you.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons. But I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's ministries. You'll never be the same.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.